Welcome to the future of money. Come with us on this journey into the world of Bitcoin, blockchain and crypto projects. You're going to meet the trailblazers. These people have changed my life and they may very well do the same for you. Welcome back, hard forkers, and welcome along for the very first time, Mitch. Good to have you on the channel.
Thanks. It feels like I should probably have been on before because we've had so many great conversations over the years, but I'm really grateful that I'm finally on the show and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. You've actually taught me a hell of a lot about blockchain, and I guess a great way to sort of kick this off is, as you know, this hard forking channel, I've been very much a Bitcoin maximalist for about 4 years, and that whole sort of narrative is, Bitcoin is really the only application of blockchain, and it's something we've spoken about extensively. I clearly think that the best use of a blockchain is for money and the subsets of money, payments, currencies, and that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. What you're currently working with, a fantastic project that is all about financial inclusion, banking the unbanked, another thing that I've heard about so often in this space and never seen any real evidence of. Sure. So I'm fascinated to get to that, and that's sort of the second part of what we're going to be talking about today. But first, I'd love to introduce you to my audience, and if you can sort of talk about your background and especially around the other uses of blockchain that you and I have discussed so many times, and what you've been doing in the space overall.
Sure. So I'm American. I have been living in Asia for nearly 20 years. And I came out here after school from California to join a company that was just starting out the first RFID applications for transportation, access control. So I was really focused more on hardware solutions, but RFID componentry, and saw a big need once we started getting into biometric passports, chipped banking cards, chipped identity cards, where the level of security was increasing, but still very much a hardware thing. And about, let's say, 7 years ago, I think I bought my first BTC. So bought it off. Yeah.
7 years ago.
7 years ago. In fact,
what's the price of Bitcoin right now?
John,
23,000, Mitch.
In fact,
in this discussion, surely you're going to retire.
In fact, Facebook reminded me today that I made a post about my first BTC purchase, and that was today, 7 years ago.
Is that right? We got a new all-time high today. There you go.
Yeah. Good timing. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I sold along
Drinks
the way.
Are on you next time I see you, mate.
Anyways, so that really piqued my interest, Sean, because I was working in the identity space, lots of different projects around the world, securing a secure travel document, but making it more secure using a cryptographic element on a chip, but still very much, physical. And so the light bulb for me went off when I could see the ability of being able to put something in the cloud using the BTC protocol. Because the internet has lots of different ways to move data around, HTTP, FTP, these kinds of protocols, and that's really good for data, but not for anything of value. And so when the idea crossed my mind to be able to marry something like a hardware thing, whether that's a pallet or an identity card with a digital twin in the cloud using blockchain, that's for me really when the light bulb went off. And I decided to get into digital ID, get into ways that we can move beyond just having something like a physical identity, whereas, then moving into diplomas, land titles, anything that's government, that is old, that's dusty, that's sitting in the back in a back room somewhere, but being able to put that onto chain. And that's really where the whole thing progressed over the years. And then finally, I applied for my first blockchain patent in 2017. And I was granted in, I think, May of 2019, I was granted my first patent. So that's really related to integrating an RFID component into a government ID, or let's say a government document, and then being able to verify that document on chain. Sounds very basic now, but when I first applied for that, 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, that was a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
And so for me, identity and fintech in the form of payments has really been the two overarching themes for me in my, years in my career, basically.
Right.
So let's see.
Mitch, I mean, let me throw a question at you at this point. I mean, we've had some fascinating discussions over the years, and I come back to that fact. I'm still very resolute in the fact that the best use of a blockchain is for money, and as I say, the subsets of it. Obviously, you've been involved in in other use cases. What do you think of all these blockchains that we've got in the space at the moment? A lot of them have turned into these sort of so-called ghost chains. They've raised billions of dollars and we just don't see any action out of them. How, for somebody sort of watching this, what would you say to them about, how do you assess a blockchain?
Yeah.
What are the good ones in your opinion that are actually doing something? What are you looking at?
So thanks for that term. I haven't heard the term ghost chain. I'm just writing that down because I think that's really clever. Yeah, I mean, there's a few of them out there. Some good, some bad. I think they're all serving different industries in different ways. If you look at VeChain, if you look at EOS, you look at Ethereum. I mean, these are all they're really.
Well, a lot of people looked at EOS and a lot of people put money into it. But what's EOS doing?
Great question. I put money into EOS and the pre-ICO, and I really had high expectations. Everyone thought it was going to be the Ethereum killer, and I think one of the biggest problems they have, my opinion, is you've got basically 12 major wallet holders holding about $4 billion in coin.
Yeah.
And great technology, but terrible execution. I mean, you can look at VeChain as well. I'm quite bullish on VeChain, but really, I think hyper diluted, way too many coin out there. Great projects, great partnerships, but doesn't seem to be launching as quickly as a lot of people had thought. Look, we have a blockchain partner. We're pretty happy with them. We're always looking to keep an eye onto the horizon as to what's coming up, whether that's going to be the Tezos of the world, or if it is truly going to be the Ripples of the world, or Consensus, or whoever it may be. It's important to always stay on the lookout, because you don't want to be married to a blockchain service provider that isn't going anywhere. Even if they have money and even if they have the projects, still having a single source for a vendor can be quite dangerous.
So we're going to get into what your company does, and I'm really intrigued to learn more about this. As I say, from my very early days in the space, that whole banking the unbanked was such a mantra of the space, and I've really just seen very little evidence of how blockchain is solving that problem. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But just before we do, I'd maybe like you to help the audience understand the difference between, say, Bitcoin being this public blockchain, so to speak, or and permissioned blockchains, because I think you guys obviously are operating on in the permissioned world.
Sure.
Could you just sort of talk quite sort of high level for people that don't maybe have a great understanding of Bitcoin and blockchain about the difference between a public and a permissioned blockchain? Before we get into what you guys do?
Sure. So I guess you're referring to my latest project that we're going to be talking about?
Well, just in general,
okay.
When we talk about an EOS, okay, you're talking about sort of 12 main nodes, etc. Is that a public or a permission blockchain, arguable, etc. Bitcoin is a completely decentralized blockchain.
Yeah.
Arguably the only one.
Correct.
So I'm just trying to help my audience understand that before we sort of move into how you got the back end of what you guys do.
Yeah. So, the clear difference is between a public and a private is that a public blockchain is essentially like a bathroom wall. So anybody, if you've ever gone into a bathroom wall, you see people write all sorts of things and phone numbers and whatnot. You can basically write whatever you want. Yeah, you can write whatever you want and it's going to stay there and everyone can see it and everyone can react off of it, but no one knows who exactly wrote it. That's, for me, what Bitcoin is. It's a public restroom wall. A private chain, private blockchain is one in where you have a set number of nodes or established, let's just call them nodes, that are allowed to operate within that chain.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I like about private chains is that you can move a lot of data onto chain very quickly. And one of the drawbacks, so obviously one of the drawbacks of a private chain is that it doesn't necessarily qualify as being 100% immutable, because if you have a limited number of nodes, then there's that idea that you could take control and you could rewrite the history of the chain. So you're right. I think that there is a strong argument to say that Bitcoin itself is truly the only public chain there is. Yes, there's some copycats, but when you look at the mining power, the network power, and the usage behind it, it is truly the granddaddy. But having said that, I like the idea of having a combination. So you have the combination of a private chain on top, where you can cache your records, cache your transactions, or whatever that may be in a really fast manner, let's say on the order of magnitude like a Visa or a MasterCard. But then you can hash that, and you can simply anchor that into a public chain to get that immutability. So you actually have the best of both.
Yeah.
And it's not terribly difficult to do that, to be able to reward your miners at both the private level and at the public level. And so that's really how I feel like you can get the best of both. It's particularly if you're going to be doing this for money, right? For payments purposes or whatnot, to be able to have both.
So we're about to get into to what your company does. And just while we're sort of talking, about the differences between Bitcoin and other blockchains, I think, for me being a hardcore Bitcoiner, we're sort of, we're seeing this huge institutional play in the space at the moment. Would you agree that maybe Bitcoin's sort of becoming this digital gold for the wealthy, quite a big institutional play, and for high net worth individuals that are maybe taking a position at the moment? We're seeing it potentially about to go parabolic. That whole sort of banking the unbanked, financial inclusion rhetoric is maybe not so relevant to Bitcoin at the moment. What are your thoughts on that?
So I wouldn't call this digital gold for the wealthy. I think it is digital gold. And I think we're going to see more and more the true pivot away and the decoupling from equities, the decoupling from gold, and it's really going to be able to stand on its own. Certainly as a medium of exchange, it does that better than gold. Does it do a better job of a store of value than gold? Some ways, yeah. It's a lot cheaper to hold BTC than it is to store gold. I think they're going to be two separate asset classes, and they're going to be, and personally speaking, I have both. I think that it's a wise strategy to have a well-balanced portfolio. But where I disagree with you is that I do not think that it will be digital gold for the rich. I think oftentimes the rich are seeking yield. And so right now you're seeing people pivot away from traditional asset classes and move into BTC, I think because they're just chasing yield. And who are the people that typically start doing these? Yeah, it's people with money. But the accessibility to BTC, I think, is far easier than gold. So in terms of democratizing the ability to hold something of wealth, I think it's far easier for, let's say, someone of more modest means to invest in BTC than it is to invest in gold. Sure.
Okay. So, I mean, but we're sort of leading up to talking about what your company does here. It's sort of somewhat of a bit of a realization for me recently is, a clear use case for Bitcoin is extremely strong if you're maybe somebody in Argentina. If you're a farmer with a certain amount of wealth, Bitcoin's a no-brainer because your currency is doing this. But if you're really, if you're living in a slum in Argentina or Venezuela, maybe Bitcoin is not so useful. It's, you maybe can't really buy something with it. It's quite difficult to acquire. You'd have to sort of give cash to somebody with it. So that sort of class of people living in the third world, so to speak, who have some money, it's a really, really strong use case for them. And I think a lot of the Western investors understand that. Maybe they're making that sort of play partly centered around seeing that use case of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure that it's really about financial inclusion for the really poor. I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that use case yet.
Yeah.
Maybe there will be some application of that, I hope. But let's move into what you guys are doing. How is your company, if you can tell us about that, how are you helping the unbanked? How are you bringing them into a financial system? And
Sure.
Introduce the company and tell us what you're doing.
Sure. Great segue. And I can't wait to talk about the crypto element for that. But yeah, I joined a Norwegian company called Block Bonds. In 2016, I joined the technical advisory board, particularly to help them manage digital ID questions, anything related to like KYC and that kind of thing. And essentially what Block Bonds is, it's a fintech, Norwegian based, and they built out a pretty user-friendly app called Spenn, Spenn. And what Spenn does essentially is offer the ability to send money. So you've got your peer-to-peer payments, transactions, no fees. The ability to save, so you have a savings component. You can spend, so you can spend it at merchants that are already on the Spenn platform. We also have a new feature that's coming out the next couple of days that's essentially a lending function. And then probably Q1 of next year, we will offer the ability to buy and sell, maybe like top 5 cryptocurrencies. So it really acts like an ecosystem. And it was designed for people in emerging markets that don't have access to regular forms of financial services. So let's just call them the unbanked or the underbanked. And we have a particular focus on Africa, although we are operational in the Philippines as well. But what has happened, Sean, is that because it is a all-inclusive platform, it has grown beyond just serving the underbanked. Because there are means now, for example, with a lending function or soon the crypto, that if you even do have a bank account, you'd still want to have Spenn on your phone, because then you're able to do things that your bank or other services don't provide. It's like a all-in-one kind of service. So we're currently operating in 4 countries, Tanzania, Zambia, Rwanda, and Philippines. And okay, given COVID, we've had to slow some things down this year, but we'll be opening up a few more coming up. But what I do for them is, as I mentioned, I've been on the board for a while, but just recently I was asked to take on the role of CPO. So as of this week, I am the Chief Product Officer for Spenn, which is super exciting because, for me, this brings it all together. This brings all the things that I've always wanted to do on the identity space, what I want to do in the fintech space. It's totally aligned with my values, and it's it's a great company, it's a great project, and it's a great use case for blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, can you maybe sort of tell us a bit more about the technology and how you use blockchain?
Sure. So what I just described sounds pretty cool. You're able to buy and sell stuff. You're able to pay for your electricity bill, top up your mobile phone, send money to a relative. And all that is based on fiat. So if you have Spenn and your partner has Spenn, you can send a Rwanda franc A to B, no transaction fee. And the way that we do that is we essentially hold the bank account with the partner bank. So we're still using the regulatory environment of that particular jurisdiction's bank. And we are an application that sits on top of that bank account. So then you have Spenn users that are using our platform, and then we provide the bank account for people to then access all those services. So the way that we use blockchain is you have, let's say, one Rwanda franc coming in, and then we release the equivalent in token into the system. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you have 100,000 Rwanda francs in the system, then you have 100,000 Rwanda franc tokens in the system. And so to the user, they're actually using the token. They're not using the francs. The francs are sitting in the bank account at the bank. So in effect, what we're talking about here, Sean, and something that we've been doing since 2016 is creating a stable coin that is backed by the currency of the nation. So this is way before, the whole sweetheart term central bank digital currencies. We've actually been digitizing currencies for nearly 5 years now.
Awesome. Right. Yeah. Okay. So what, you're in 4 countries at the moment. Tell us a bit more about, how is it different from a stable coin, or is it the same? Maybe sort of continue on that narrative a wee bit. I mean, most people watching this understand what a stable coin is. You obviously touched on central bank digital currencies there. Maybe explain a bit more for us.
I mean, it's the most obvious difference is that we're stepping into a country that is pretty far away from issuing their own central bank digital currency. And we're talking about countries in sub-Saharan Africa that are just trying to stay apace with, COVID and humanitarian issues and just proper development. So we perform the same function as, let's say, a digital euro or a digital yuan or whatever that may be. The difference being, I guess, that because we are a private enterprise, still operating within the framework of the bank environment. Let's be really clear about that. We're not going rogue here and just backing it up with BTC or our word or something like that. We are actually completely auditable. You can come in, you can see, we say, look, we've got 1 million Zambian dollars here, and there's a million Zambia tokens right there. So you can very clearly see through Blockchain Explorer or whatever, you can see that the exact ratio exists. The difference being, with a more developed country would be that the actual bank itself is issuing that currency. So they're able to do more capital controls on that as well. However, I will say that because we are stepping in and acting as that central bank currency, that we are still able to show that transparency to the bank regulators, so that they know that they're not losing control of their currency. Let's put it that way. They're still able to see, what sort of money is moving around. Can it be taxed? Do they need to put any sort of capital controls on it? So I guess that's just the biggest difference, is we are acting on behalf of the central bank, really. Right.
So you sort of, you're effectively sort of digitizing the currency of these and these sort of, I don't know what to use.
Emerging markets. I mean, we're doing what Libra is trying to do with the US dollar. That's what we're doing in emerging markets.
Right. That's fascinating.
Yeah. And it works. And this isn't something, I'm not coming on your show and saying, hey, I've got this idea, come invest in me. This is actually a well-established company that's been around for a while that is, I would say, at a nice smoldering pace. We've got some great partners in the transportation space, on the mobile money space. So, I would say one of the drawbacks is that we are smartphone based. And that can be a bit of a obstacle in some of these emerging markets where smartphones can be quite expensive. But you would be surprised how cheap some of these phones are these days. But that's just one of the
a lot of people are familiar with M-Pesa. You sent me a comparison chart the other day. Maybe if you want to do a screen share, and we can sort of get in for for people that are really interested in this. If you still
would you like me to do that?
Well, yeah, go for it.
Okay. 1 second. Thanks. There we go. You can see me okay?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, I'm not going to make this a slide heavy, conversation, but really the value proposition is to get, increase financial inclusion into the emerging markets. And it's just perfect for Africa. You've got a young population that is becoming more urban, more digital, and there's a lot of people. There's a problem of overpopulation. Mm-hmm. So you put that together, and it's a perfect storm for really a solution like Spenn to become quite popular, to be able to just tie that all together and really, in some way, Sean, leapfrog some of the steps that have been taken in the Western world, where you have 20 different apps on your phone that do 20 different things, whereas what we're trying to provide is almost a one-stop shop for financial services, and then even moving beyond that in transportation and whatnot. So as I had mentioned, we've got, what is the problem? We've got 2 billion people that are unbanked, and that's just a ridiculous problem that we have. So that's what we're really trying to do, is to tap into that market and bring them up to speed. So I think, as I had mentioned, these are the services that we're providing. So the ability to send, spend, save, some of that overdraft protection, loans, if you will.
Yep.
What we find is a lot of transactions get that don't get completed just because users are just a few dollars or francs or whatever it may be, just a few short of fulfilling that transaction. Mm-hmm. So we've introduced an overdraft policy that allows the users to take out loans to be able to complete transactions. So that's coming on board. And then, oddly enough, for a company like Block Bonds to be using blockchain as a tool for so many years, we're now finally seeing that this is important to add a crypto function onto the platform. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what I'll be focusing on in Q1 and Q2 of next year, is getting that on the platform and getting to the point where a user can buy and sell, prevailing, maybe top 5 coins out there. Not necessarily so much for like a remittance thing, although that can probably be what it's used for. But I think, to our point that we were discussing earlier, some of these governments are a bit rickety, and a lot of people, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, don't necessarily trust their governments or their currency. And so if you have a way to store value that is not influenced by the government or banks, then I think that can be quite appealing. So if you are a Spenn user and you want to amass some BTC or Ethereum or whatever it may be for a rainy day or as an investment, then we're going to be able to offer that ability to our users.
That's an interesting one for me. It's something that I've grappled hard with over the last few days and debated with a number of people. For me, I sort of feel like, as I say, it's maybe somebody with a certain amount of wealth in a developing economy that would want to do that. Your farmer who is unbanked. Are they going to buy BTC or Ethereum? That to me is extremely questionable at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's why we grew beyond our ESG roots. I mean, we are very much rooted in the idea that we want those 2 billion people that do not have a bank account to have a bank account. But the idea here is that once you become banked, then you've kind of lost us because we've done our job. Yeah. We're doing the job of the banks because the banks don't see value in investing in bringing you on as a new customer, because the cost that it would cost the bank to get you enrolled and get you a bank account far surpasses the amount of money that you're going to make for them. Yep. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so that's really what we're doing. But also, we have to think beyond the unbanked. We have to think about, okay, now that you're banked and you're using our platform, what are these other services? So by no means do I think that if you're a fisherman in Tanzania the first thing you're going to do on our platform is go buy some Ethereum. That's not going to happen. But
maybe you're a good fisherman.
You're a fisherman. You pull a couple fish out, you keep one for yourself, you sell one in the local market. You're able to send that money, or you're able to accept that money onto the platform. Maybe over the course of a couple of months, you decide that you want to start a savings account with us. So then you do that. And then once you establish a certain minimum, then you can actually borrow against that savings account. So we're talking about a real journey here. We're not saying that, you're going to just go from being a farmer to buying crypto. It's a journey, and we want to be able to help our users take that journey.
Yeah. Well, I think the journey with all of fintech and crypto being a subset of that is, how are these central banks looking at the space? How they've been regulated. It's great to to understand what your company are doing. So on that note, what is that relationship with the central banks and the governments in these territories that you're operating in? How did that come about? How are you working with them?
Great question. And I firmly believe, I'm maybe not quite the Bitcoin maximalist that you are, but I firmly believe
anymore. That's I just want to make that clear.
Okay. Well, banks are here to stay. The notion of what is a bank is definitely changing. It's not going to change. It already has started to change. And I think it's important that we keep them in mind when we're doing these kinds of things. So we are fully compliant. So the way that we work is we go into a country, we typically talk to the top bank, or maybe number two. Number two tends to be more open to new technology, new ideas.
Mitch, sorry, just while you're talking, do you want to move down to a couple of the other slides as well?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
There was a good comparison chart that I think would be a good one just to sort of leave up there while we're chatting.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Continue.
No worries. Thanks. So what we do is we go in, we sit down with the bank, and we say, look, we know that there's a certain amount of people in this country that do not have access to banking. We know that you probably don't want to invest too much into that group. So using our platform, we can guarantee that you will have people accessing your services through our platform that would normally not be preferred customers. So we sit down with the central banks, we sit down with the banks, we are fully vetted by the banks. And we just feel that that's the best approach. And what that does create, Sean, is it creates a playbook. So we are able, once you do it a couple of times, you start to understand this is what it takes. These are the steps that it takes. And I think that it lends credence to our project and our vision, because we're in it for the long haul. My partners and I, we most of us do come from a finance background and previous success in other fintechs. So we understand the value of proper partnerships. And I think there's something to be said about block bonds and Spenn having been around for nearly 5 years. And I think that owes a lot to the fact that we do have good partnerships with the banks and the central banks, and we're actually offering a service that they really appreciate.
Yep. Okay.
So you can see here. I know this is a bit blah blah marketing, and I don't want to disparage our competition.
That's being, of course you do.
No, not really, because I think we're all in this together. Of course, may the best company win, but
as far as banking the unbanked, yeah, absolutely. Anyone that's in that space,
of course, we want to be the best, but and I think we're well on our way here, Sean, because we offer a lot of things that other companies don't offer, and maybe that's because they're operating outside of the traditional banking sphere, or they're focusing more on analog phones, or they're focusing on, maybe like rapacious kind of lending practices, which are not really our thing. So I like what we stand for, and I like that we come from these ESG roots where we are trying to solve a problem and then gradually roll more features out to include a wider group of a wider demographic to serve to.
Okay. Question, Mitch, how was, obviously a lot of my audience is, used to listening to sort of pure Bitcoin chat or more recently with some of my guests uncovering the next hidden gem that's going to 10x. What are you guys about? How was the company funded? And sort of what is the business model overall?
Yeah, I mean,
there might be some people watching this that are a little bit confused. I mean, this isn't any paid promotion here, far from it. I'm fascinated to understand the application of blockchain and fintech to really help the unbanked. So I'm just sort of want to clear that up for the audience. How do you guys operate? How was it funded? What business model?
I guess probably a good place to start is
you weren't at ICO, were you?
Exactly. I was about to say that. I mean, I've been approached a number of times from various people and companies saying, why don't you do an ICO? And I guess it's just never been part of our ethos. I think we also maybe we missed that first round in 2017, 2018, and it just didn't seem that attractive afterwards. No, we're, like I said, we're a particularly mature company in the space. We are comprised on our management team and our board of some really stalwart people that have been in traditional banking for a while, that can appreciate what blockchain offers, but can also appreciate that traditional funding, either through VCs or private equity or whatever it may be, is the way to go. So I'm not ruling out the idea of doing an ICO, or I guess what's the latest one, the SPAC. That's also another avenue for funding. I would say probably the next step for us is to look at the blockchain service providers that we're using and really, take it to the next step and say, is that the right approach? Do we need to be thinking about taking this in-house, maybe creating our own token for internal purposes? Because really, and if you've been listening to the show now for the last 30 minutes or so, really what we're doing is by tokenizing a fiat currency, that could be done by ourselves. I mean, if we had the right in-house know-how, this is something that we could quite easily do on our own. The tools.
Mitch, I'd like to have you as a regular guest on the Hard Forking channel. I think you are a wealth of knowledge. You've been in the space for a long time, doing a number of different things. In closing, who do you want to know about what you're up to right now? Who are you trying to reach out to? Who should get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not. The purpose of doing this call wasn't to reach out to my future Spenn customers, obviously.
No.
But we don't do the rounds very much, at the conference level and whatnot. We're not doing a lot of outreach, I would say. We're really focused on the product. We're really focused on execution, But I would say if you are a blockchain service provider, and you have something out there that you'd like us to take a look at, reach out to us, reach out to me. I guess maybe my link or whatever will be included in this show. Yep. And, just keep an eye on us. We're always looking for partnerships, as we expand beyond Africa. We do have a foothold in the Philippines. So if you are our provider, transportation, financial services, food delivery, you can imagine any services that could plug into this, and you would like to be on our platform to be exposed to our base, then please reach out. We're always looking for partnerships in our markets that we are in now, but also in the future.
Awesome. Well, look, buddy, it'd be great to finally have you on the channel.
Sure.
You've got a good microphone now.
Thank you.
Which was my.
Which is your idea.
So look, let's get you back on a regular basis, mate. You're definitely one of the more knowledgeable, intelligent people that I've come across, you know, in the blockchain space. I think you've got a lot that you could impart to my audience generally. So, you know, yes, it'll be good to hear more about what you're currently up to, and you know, have you as a bit of a pundit on the entire space in general on a regular basis. I hope that's agreeable for you. You know, love to host you again.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we spoke a lot about Spenn and my background, but you know, I'm a coin investor just like a lot of us. So if you want to get one more voice out there and one more opinion, I would be grateful to be on the show.
You've got a lot. I think a lot to offer to the hard forking audience.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you were sort of one of the first people I came across. You know, when sort of 4 years into telling the world about Bitcoin. You know, it was great to sort of meet you and hear and understand the other applications of blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you do become what you're around, and I was certainly just around Bitcoiners, and there is that narrative that there is no other use case of blockchain outside of Bitcoin. As I said, you know, we started off the show by saying, for me, it's you know, clearly its best use case is money and the subsets of that. And that's very much what you're doing with your current company. But I think you've got a really good appreciation of how the whole space is evolving.
Again, it's about data. So it's about ensuring that the transactions that we're doing in the background. So when you have one person on our platform sending money to another person on the platform, to them, they actually don't even know that there's blockchain running in the background.
Yep.
So we're tokenizing their money, and it's going back and forth, and we are keeping a ledger in the background of that transaction. So it really doesn't have any benefit for us to be preaching about Bitcoin this or blockchain that. For them, all they want to know is that when they send something from A to B, that it's, you know, it takes 3 seconds and it's there.
Yeah.
Of course, to be able to offer other services crypto related is important, but for us, it's about data first, and then, you know, that store of value second.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, listen, thank you very much for joining us, Mitch. Well, as I say, we'd love to have you on a regular basis, and thank you everyone for watching. All the links are below if you want to get in touch with Mitch and learn more. I'm sure there'll be people out there that will be fascinated to learn more. So thanks, mate. We'll see you again very soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Sean. Have a good day.
Yeah.